Hey guys, what's going on? It's Classic, and I wanted to make a quick video on my Thrustmaster TX settings for ACC because there's a few on YouTube already, but they seem slightly out of date due to like more recent updates with the game. Most notably the 2020 tire model update that came with the Imola DLC. They really worked on like the slow speed forces of the car. That sort of transition of balance between slow speed corners is much more nuanced now, and that led me to adjust some of my settings down to kind of get more of a balance for that. So here are the settings. I want to just explain a few of my thought processes and what I tweaked, but for anyone who just wants to kind of copy them and get cracking, I'm running 88% gain, 12% minimum force, and 100% dynamic damping. It was the dynamic damping that I changed. I used to have that at 200%. And so I've reduced that back down to 100, and I've got a much more balance between the front and rear wheel forces of the car. And this took me a while to figure out, but basically a way to understand if your settings are wrong is if the front wheel forces are much higher than the rear wheel forces. So when you turn into a corner, if the force feedback's really heavy, but then sort of on the exit of a corner with exit oversteer, if it suddenly goes really light and vague, that means you've got an imbalance between the front and rear wheel forces. And for me, it was turning this dynamic damping down and reducing the minimum force slightly that helped to just balance out those two forces. So you're sacrificing a little bit of the force on the way in, but getting more detail for kind of exit oversteer situations, which I found, especially at first with ACC on the default settings, I found were really difficult with a TX. And I thought it was my wheel, but you can just about adjust them to get a lot better, a lot more dynamic force through those oversteer moments. I've also added road effects to 5%, which I had it turned off previous to this, but this just gives you a little bit of rumble from the curbing, so on the way in, the way out of the corners, but doesn't seem to. I've not found any way, no potholes or crazy bumps around bathhursts or anything that really throws the car off. So I would recommend that, because you do miss out a little bit if you don't have a slight rumble from the rumble strips. Steering lock is 900, which is max for the TX, and then steering linearity is set to 1. I did find that most of the cars have a steering ratio of 15 in the car setup, but there are a few like the Ferrari 488 which uses 14, and I find that to be really front heavy. It darts into the corner like kind of unusually so, and I found myself like turning in on using about 3% of the steering lock, and it felt odd to me. And I started playing about with a steering linearity setting, but what I didn't realize is in the car setup there's the steering ratio, the steering rack steering ratio in there, and most cars do default to 15. There's a few that are on 14, so have a play with that as well if you're struggling with some cars being a little bit too twitchy on turning, and without having to fiddle about with either your steering lock or your steering linearity. So I hope that's going to help some people. I think the sort of more entry level, the more budget belt driven wheels are pretty acceptable on ACC. Again, I'm having more fun with the game than ever, and I've finally got to a level where I'm really happy with most cars. I can just jump from one to the other and I can feel the differences, and I've got a nice even force. So hope it helps some people who are still struggling, and yeah, good luck out there.